This is my journey. Inspired one story at a time, a library of leaders was created. It began as a journey to learn. As time went on, it began to grow. All it needed was a platform, and this podcast was created to listen, to inspire, to share. I am a storyteller, and this is my journey. Welcome to another episode of Profiles in Leadership. I'm your host, Steve Anderson, and today our guest is Marcelo Culbucci, who is an entrepreneur, innovator, technologist, and an author. He's been building software products for over 30 years, having sold his first software at age 14. He has worked at Microsoft and Amazon, leading software engineering, product, data science, and UX. He has founded 6 startups in Seattle and London and launched a dozen tech projects. He's the inventor of 11 patents. Marcelo has been a community builder in Seattle, organizing dozens of meetups, events, and conferences. He has written over 1,000 blog posts and articles on his website and other tech publications. Outside of tech and startups, Marcelo loves to cook elaborate meals for friends, run marathons, 8 and counting, and travel with his wife and kids. So Marcelo, welcome to the program. It's great to have you on today.
Thank you for having me, Steve.
So give us a little context, just to begin with. Kind of tell us where you grew up. I know that you live in a suburb of Seattle now. So how did you get from there to here? And just give us a little background information.
Sure. I was born in Brazil, and I went to study computer science there. Shortly after I graduated, I saw an ad on a newspaper that Microsoft was recruiting to work in Redmond. So I applied to that job, and long story short, I joined Microsoft. They relocated me to the Seattle region in the late 90s. I worked there for 7 years. Then I had that entrepreneurial itch to go like build something by myself. So I left Microsoft. I spent 18 years in the startup world, founded many startups, worked on startup studios, many things like that, both in Seattle and London, like you mentioned. Then I joined Amazon, which is not a nice startup anymore. It's probably the opposite of it. And I spent a couple of years at Amazon, and I had this. Amazon is very peculiar the way they do things. They have their own, systems that they invented, and one of those really caught my attention. And so when I left Amazon, I felt that I needed to write a book about it because it would benefit a lot of other founders, product leaders, innovators, people that are creative and thinking about doing something. And so I left last year, wrote the book, published just a couple months ago, and now here I am.
Yeah, that's great. And so for those that are watching this on video, I'm going to hold up the book right here, but here's the book, and it's called the PRFAQ Framework, and it's adapting Amazon's innovation framework to work for you. So yeah, the book is great. It's well done. It's well published, well written. So I appreciated looking at it for this and reading it for this interview.
Thank you.
So tell us a little bit about it. What the title means is press release plus frequently asked questions. So I know that is that Amazon's moniker that they use for that.
Yeah, so I think it's worth going back about 20 years ago, right?
Okay.
So it was 2003, 2004. Amazon was growing. There were like multiple projects, it wasn't just a bookstore anymore. They were doing
Yeah.
many things. There was like Kindle and Amazon Music and Prime Video and like tons of other stuff. And it got to a point that Jeff Bezos, the CEO of Amazon, CEO and founder, and his leadership team were struggling to keep track of everything that was going on at the company. Right,
Yeah.
because there was so much, and they were like frustrated, and they started experimenting with many things. So like, how can we keep context across meetings? How can we have better debates? Like the whole PowerPoint style of meetings, like it didn't work so well. So they started experimenting, and one of the things that they invented is the PR FAQ framework, which stands for press release and frequently asked questions, like you mentioned. And the PR FAQ is primarily used at Amazon to discuss proposals, right? Like new ideas, changes, like let's launch a new product, a new business, or let's change a product or a program, or even a policy, like an IT policy, an HR policy, or a legal policy within the company. Like we always use the PRFAQ. And it's a document that is written in a very specific way that works backwards from what you're trying to achieve, right? Like what is the
Hmm.
customer experience that you're trying to deliver? And then like how can we get there? So it paints a picture of the future in a very exciting, enthusiastic way so that the team can align, is that the future that we want? And then work to get to that future.
Okay. And and it's a form too that really you bring out in the book a lot, and as a theme is that narrative writing is kind of the way to do things, as opposed to, as you said, like probably a lot of the business world, was very used to the PowerPoint type of presentations, which, there's been a lot of controversy on that lately, and people don't
Yeah.
use it quite as much. But what is the power of narrative writing, and tell us what that means when you're presenting something to your team.
Yeah, this is a big question to unpack, right? So for me, the realization of that power was like as soon as you join Amazon, like every meeting is backed by a document, right? So sometimes it's just a one-page document, sometimes it's a six-page document that you read at the meeting, right? So you join a meeting, you read the document, and then you start the discussion, right? So what that does is it helps everyone in the meeting be at the same level, like the same starting point, right?
Hmm.
Otherwise, what happens is like people have different information, different context. They're like, why we are here? Like, didn't we discuss this last week? Oh, I wasn't at the meeting last week. So all those problems goes away when you have a document to back it up. And like on my first week at Amazon, I felt that was so awkward, so
Yeah.
strange, because you join a meeting and there's like 10 people that are like silent and they're
Yeah.
reading, right? And they're
Yeah.
reading for 5, 10, 20 minutes, right? Whatever is presented in front of them. And then we have this conversation. Like the first 2 weeks, you go like, what is going on here? This is so weird. But then you start to realize, wait a second, the meetings that we have are so much more productive, are so much more in depth and more valuable. And the discussions lead to such better decisions. Then it clicked to me like, yes, the document is what's bringing this up on people, right?
Yeah.
And the opposite of that is like someone that goes to the meeting and like they say a few things, right? Or they have a PowerPoint deck and like they present the deck. And those formats are not very good because they leave a lot to the imagination or a lot to misinterpretation. Let's put
Yeah.
this way, right?
Yeah.
Because it's like it's not on the paper, so it's very hard to relay that information to someone else even. So narratives, like they really get rid of many of these dysfunctions that you see in typical meetings and typical organizations.
Yeah, I'm familiar with the process only because my oldest daughter worked for Amazon, and I think she described it just like you did. Like, oh, these meetings are weird. You just sit there and you read through this thing, and everyone's silent, and so I think she had the same experience you did.
Yes.
But it's I guess the person who's not used to the process might ask the question, well, why don't they just read it before they come? Why don't they take their own time and read it, and as opposed to sitting in the meeting in silence with a bunch of other people?
Yeah, that's a fair question, right? And like people may read before the meeting. The problem is a lot of people are very busy, right? And the
Yeah.
assumption that they read before the meeting should not be made, right? So it's better to start a meeting assuming like no one read the document. Let's
Mhm.
allocate 10, 20 minutes of that meeting to read the
Yeah.
document, and then we start a conversation. So we avoid all like those smalls, like detours about what does this mean? What does that mean? Like, have we considered this? Have we considered that? Like, it's in the document, right? Like, if everyone reads the document, then we can have a conversation on top of that.
Yeah, and you state in the book that, in preparing for that, what writing does is it just fosters critical thinking, helps you get to a deeper analysis. So again, when we think of brain science and how our
Hmm.
brains work and whatever, just expand on that a little bit and tell us what your thought is on that.
Yeah, so that's one of the reasons that Amazon started this narrative process. Like they adopted the narrative process, right? Is because it's really hard for you to write incoherent text, right? And what I mean by that is very hard for you to write a document that things don't connect, don't make sense, like don't add up. Like the story needs to be there. And if it is not there, when you're writing, you feel like, oh, I need to like change this word or rephrase the sentence or like it makes you feel uncomfortable when you're doing that. So writing is a form of like bringing clarity for you, right?
Okay.
And you don't need anyone to do that. Like people writing journals, like they have been doing that for hundreds of years. Like scientists and everyone has been writing for like their mental health or for business ideas. Like that's because writing is thinking, right? So in researching for this book, I started reading some academic papers about the cognitive science of writing and reading. And there's plenty of an abundance of proof out there that when you
Yeah.
write, you're really thinking. You're activating parts of your brain that you would not unless you're doing that. Speaking is another form as well, Steve. Like, like people like to
Yeah.
bounce ideas back and forth, but writing you can do alone, and it activates a different part of your brain as well.
Yeah. That's really interesting. I've said before that I think I discovered through, personality tests and things like that, that I tend to be a verbal decision maker, which means, I maybe present an idea and then I ask you what you think and I ask somebody else what they think and then we have a discussion. Then somewhere along that process, it kind of comes to, oh, okay, this is what I think we ought to do. And that's very different than the narrative form. Uh, but I do think that's interesting that, like you say, you're activating different areas of your brain and maybe understanding it at different levels depending on whether you're writing or speaking or whatever.
Yeah, so I would say there is what you're doing is very similar to writing. Like when you're talking with people, bouncing ideas and collecting. Um, the difference is when you're writing, is much easier to identify gaps on what you're not thinking about.
Hmm.
Like because as you go writing, you go like, oh, wait a second, I got into this sentence here, and like I actually don't know about this. And when you're
Hmm.
just speaking, it's very easy to you know have a little bit of an oversight and like miss some important things that should be there. So even if you're talking, it would be good to capture in a document, right? So that it doesn't disappear into the ether.
Right.
The other thing about a document as well is much easier to bring someone else on board, right? Instead of telling the whole story again and miss a few points that you forgot to tell, like here is how we've been capturing this idea, right? So you
Yeah.
can use that as the basis to start the conversation.
And you also state that the framework starts from a very customer centric approach as well.
Yeah. So that's the idea of like thinking about the outcome, right? Like what do you want to get out of that? What do you want to get for the customer and what do you want to get for the business, right? So you paint that picture of the future and you start from there and say like, okay, if that's what we want, what do we need to do to get there? Like what are the steps? What are the strategy and the choices that we need to make that's going to increase the chances of getting there? There is no guaranteed success in business or in life, but you can eliminate some of the obvious risks.
So if I, use this approach and like say I'm at Amazon and I'm coming to a meeting with 10 people in it, um, it seems that then only one person would be writing the narrative and presenting the idea.
Hmm.
So you're not suggesting that collaboration and seeking out feedback and things like that isn't part of the process. It's just to get the idea out there and then that part of it begins.
Yeah, you need to have a leader, right? Like in any project, you need to have the person that is going to be responsible and accountable for
Uh-huh.
it, right? Like from at the top. And in a document, it's just like that. A document is like a small project. You write the document, and like you want to have a one person that is responsible for that document. It doesn't mean that other people are not contributing to it, doing research, understanding the market, understanding the customer, the problems, the solution. Like everything, everyone can be contributing to that, but you want one person to like bring it all together so that it becomes coherent.
Yeah. And I can remember back when I was leading a company as well, I always my executive staff knew that I worked better from a draft. In other words, you know, let's not just sit in a room and throw out a bunch of
Yes.
ideas, but present your idea. And I guess it's the same way. It's a narrative in a sense of I can look at it, I can read it. Now from there we can start to tweak it and do things differently as opposed to having come up with every aspect of it on the fly in the group.
Yes, and that's so important because a PRFAQ is a draft until a decision is made to pursue a project, right? So
Yeah.
what you're really doing is you're presenting this document and asking for feedback. And you want
Yeah.
people to look from their different angles, right? If you know someone is from finance, they need to look from the finance angle, like, does this make sense from what I understand? If it is from marketing or sales or like the product team, like you want each one to bring their perspective, provide feedback, and like the document owner, like the project owner, like updates the document and incorporates new information about it until a decision is made to go or no go. Like, should we pursue this project or should we not pursue this project?
Yeah. Yeah, it's in the book too. You bring out these key themes on problem and solution discovery, and you talk about this process is keeping the conversation at a high strategic level, not get kind of buried in the weeds, so to speak, and then avoid the pitfalls of decision by committee. So, give an example of decision by committee, or what does that look like that's not effective?
Yeah, so you can imagine like any kind of decision, people are gonna have different perspectives on it, right? And one of the risks with product is to compromise, right? So imagine that your one of your customers wants a bottle that is a 2 liter bottle to hold, some liquid, and other customers want a 1 liter bottle, and you decide to compromise and you ship a 1.5 liter bottle. So now you made two customers unhappy.
Yeah.
That's
Okay.
that's
Yeah.
the example of compromise here. So you have to be very
Yeah.
careful. Inside of an organization, everyone is going to be pulling and pushing, to different directions. But you have to know where it's safe to compromise, right? To find a middle point where you're going to have to take a stance, where some people might be unhappy about it, and that's okay because you're trying to make this into a coherent project, product, business idea.
So if I go to work for Amazon, I probably know that this is the framework and it's company wide so that I'm going to adopt it. But let's say for instance you're starting one of your startups, you're doing it with another company and you want to bring this, idea
Hmm.
into your meetings. What are some of the challenges that people face and struggle with when they're trying to adopt this kind of framework?
I would divide the challenge in two buckets, right? So one challenge is the writing challenges. Like, people don't feel they are good at writing, they don't know how to write, they don't know how to incorporate that. The other one is the reading challenge. Like, they feel like people don't want to read it, don't want to comment on a document, don't want to do all that. The reality is the obstacles are not as hard as people think, right?
Hmm.
Because when people think about narrative writing, they always think about romance and fiction, and it's like, I don't know how to write that, but it's not that. This is business practical writing, right? So in the book, I explain very detailed, in detail, like how you go about writing this. It's not that hard. If you know how to write
Yeah.
English, you can do it, right?
And I think you actually said in the book that you're not expected to write poetry. You don't have to explain what the sun looks like in three different ways or something.
That's right. If you're
Yeah.
doing a solar power startup, you explain how that aspect work, not about the beauty of the sun and the energy and all that stuff, right? So I think that's
Yeah.
what people get confused, because so much of what we read in business is in marketing lingo, it's in sales lingo, right? Which is very elaborate and very like beautiful, let's put it this way,
Yeah.
right? And what you're doing is, when you're making decisions, when you're talking about strategy, when you talk about vision, or even when you're talking about tactics and like how to execute and plan and roadmap, like, you don't need any of that. You just need to be clear, right?
Yeah.
Like, just direct and
Yeah.
plain.
So I'm sure you get asked this question all the time now, but we said earlier that by actually doing the writing, it stimulates a certain part of your brain and helps you critically think better and so on. Um, that now we got AI. So it's
Hmm.
like, oh, I don't have time to write that all out, so I'll just throw out a few things and whatever, and then this AI will write it for me. I would assume that doesn't activate the critical part of your or the brain to bring up the critical thinking. So, are you concerned that AI is going to mess this up?
I am very concerned. And recently, there was a paper published exactly about this, showing that AI actually reduced critical thinking.
Yeah.
So I think there is the right way and the wrong way to use AI, right? So if you're using writing to think, you don't want AI writing for you. So
Mm.
that applies to the PRFAQ or strategic documents that you might write. It might apply to your journal entries. Like you don't want AI writing your journal entries because the writing is the processing that you are doing with your
Yeah.
brain, right?
Yeah.
So that's a bad use of AI. Of course, there's many types of writing that you don't need to think too much, right? It's like more mechanical writing. So I'll give an example. If you're going to create your resume, like I don't think there's a lot of value for you to write your own resume. Like AI is going to do a much better job there, right? And you don't need
Hmm.
to think a lot. Like you already did the work. It's your life experiences. AI is
Okay.
much more practical in doing that tactical writing, let's say.
Yeah.
But there's two other parts of AI that I think are very valuable. One is on the research, brainstorming, planning. Like you're working with AI as like a partner. Like help me find this information. Let's think through this. Like all that kind of stuff is very valuable. And the other one is the reviewing and critiquing. AI is really good at that. Like you write and then you present to AI and it's like, what am I missing? What will people not understand? How can I make this clear? AI can provide very valuable insights into that.
Mm. Yeah. Very interesting. I've been around a long time, so when I think about this, and I'm not negative AI. I think AI is going to bring some amazing things to our world. But you look at it, and like anything in writing, you get better as you practice it.
Hmm.
So, I think back on the days when, way back when calculators came about, and all of a sudden we started using that, and most people now can't do a division or the way we used to do long math or math in school because we're just so used to using the calculator. So that skill in a way has kind of gone away. Without a calculator, kind of dead in the water. So do you worry about people losing their writing skills if they rely on AI too much?
Not much. And the reason is you still need to write a lot to tell AI what to do. So I've been hearing more and more that people that know how to articulate ideas and how to think through ideas gonna have a superpower to work with AI because they can
Hmm.
tell AI exactly what to do. And those that struggle to articulate or to think through some big picture are not going to be able to control AI as better as other people. So I think that's going to be um, different, right? I,
Yeah.
I don't think that the typewriter or the computer made people write less. I think AI
Hmm.
is slightly different than that, but not too much.
Yeah. Yeah. Interesting. So when you think about somebody listening to this that has their own company and they'd like to bring some more structure to their framework, and maybe this is an option. Um, do you have to take it hook, line, and sinker all the way through, or can you take pieces of it and be effective with that? What's your opinion?
Yeah, I think you can start small, right? I think the writing is the most important aspect that I think every business culture should adopt, full stop, right? Like maybe they don't need to adopt the PRFAQ, but adopting writing is very valuable. And writing not only for vision and strategy, writing for the plans, writing about, the state of the business. Amazon has other types of frameworks that it uses as well to talk about like how are things going, right?
Yeah.
PRFAQ is very much forward looking. Amazon has tools that are backward looking or present looking, right? So you can use different strategies to write and adopt that culture into your organization. The other thing is, I don't know if a lot of organizations have this problem, but many people that are very uh, hungry and like they like to execute, they like to drive, sometimes they spend too little time thinking before doing, right? They
Hmm.
jump right into like the let's build this, let's do this thing, let's launch this program. And like writing helps you pause and like think a little bit about it. Like, is this the right thing for us to do? Yes, we can do it, but should we do it? Right? As
Yeah.
compared with everything else that we want to do. So sometimes like slowing down in the beginning is very powerful because it helps you accelerate later.
And it makes me think too. I'm sure you're familiar with disc profile and other personality testing type of programs. And through that, we learn that different personality types learn in different ways.
Hmm.
So, somebody who would really react well to the narrative writing part of it, maybe somebody learns more from looking at a screen, or somebody learns more from hearing it from somebody else. So how do you incorporate those differences in learning styles or personality styles into the program? I would assume that maybe some people are better or more effective at this than others.
Yeah, I don't know if I have a lot of thoughts about this, Steve. It's a fair question that I didn't think about it too much before. I think the difference of writing is that for the people reading it, reading the document, they can pace themselves, right? So if they find the document is too slow, they can read faster, and if they find it's too complicated, they can pause and they can do some research and come back. So we adjust to different comprehension styles, I would say, not
Hmm.
necessarily learning styles. And definitely there is a little bit of a disadvantage for people that struggle with reading, right?
Yeah.
Maybe they have dyslexia or some other problems, which can be problematic. But in the business world, we're always going to find, writing written content.
Yeah, yeah, for sure. In the book, you also use Jeff Bezos' quote, which I thought was good. I've heard it before, but I think it's impactful, where he says, "Be stubborn on vision, but flexible on details." So, how does that quote work into your framework?
Yeah, that's the part of the PRFAQ that I think it's important for people to get. You're not writing a plan. Like a plan has like specific steps and tasks and dates and a roadmap, right? A PRFAQ is more like paint the future, like what we want out of this. And like don't talk about the how we're gonna get there in details, right? So if you spend enough time there, like you create a vision that is worth having. It doesn't mean that you're going to be able to get there, but it's a vision that is good. And then you go in and start executing. And the execution is where there's a lot of details, a lot of back and forth, a lot of experimentation.
Yeah, yeah, that makes sense. And it also I've been a huge proponent of leaders in business, and are some of the best are good storytellers. So in a way, you're kind of telling
Hmm.
a story. So do you teach storytelling skills, so to speak, or writing skills to people in the organization so that they get better at this?
Yeah, I would say light storytelling, right? So
Okay.
in the book, I explain a few ways that people can go about telling a story about a business idea, right? Because you're not romanticizing or creating a fiction, although it is fictional and aspirational. But you have to write, like a beginning, a middle, and an end, and create some type of story arc, like what problem
Yeah.
existed, what is the product that you created, which is the change factor, like, and how is the
Mhm.
world better after it. So you connect those dots, right? And it doesn't have to be linear like that. But like when people get to the end of the document, they can answer those questions, right? Where is the world today? What problems we have or the customers has? um, how we're going to change that and what are the benefits. So like that is all incorporated in the document.
And when you're starting to create the document, and you also talk about how, kind of the Simon Sinek made famous, understanding your why, is a key component of writing that narrative. So
Hmm.
you know exactly why you're doing it, and what point you're trying to get across.
Yeah, and I say there's three different whys that you have to work together into a single vision. There is like the why for your customer, which is the most important why. Like, what is the
Hmm.
benefit that you're trying to create for customers, right? Like, if you can't explain that, you're probably gonna have a hard time selling your product or program or service. There was the why for the business, which is like, why are we doing this? Like, is this to improve revenue? Is this to protect the business? Is this to reduce expense? Like, I have to have clarity around that as well. And there's the why for the people around it as well. Like, what is driving them? Like, what's
Hmm.
motivating them? Is it a promotion? Is it a higher salary? Is it because they love the challenge that they are approaching? So understanding these three whys and bringing them together help you deliver a much better like product or program or service.
And in the FAQ part of the framework, there's also frequently asked questions that you would anticipate customers would ask, but then there's also internal frequently asked questions. So explain the difference between those two.
Yeah, so the document is 6 pages long. The first page is this press release, which is very aspirational, like you're announcing as if the product or service already existed. Then the second page is the customer FAQs, which is like, what if the customers read the press release? What would they ask? Right. And the following 4 pages are internal FAQs. And the internal FAQs is where the meat of the document is, right? Is where the most valuable aspects are there. And you're going to find information about the feasibility, like, can we do this? The viability, should we do this? Like the value for the customer and for the business, what do we get out of doing this? And what does the customer get out of us doing that? And the last one is the usability as well, like how easy is going to be to get this in the hands of customers, right? So you go through all questions that are related to those topics. The questions might be like, what problem are we solving for the customers? How are they solving this problem today? What is the state of the market? Is this problem growing or shrinking? Right. So you answer questions about that that help you clarify your thinking about what problem you're addressing and what is the right solution for that.
So we talked earlier in the bio that you worked for Microsoft, you worked for Amazon, you've started 6 different startups. So what are you currently doing now? And is part of your goal or role now to help people, figure out how to do this? I mean, is that do people hire you to tell them how to do this?
Yeah, so about 60% of my time is dedicated to this, like the promoting the book, doing workshops about this content, work with people to adopt, creating additional articles and videos about this topic. The other 40%, I am tinkering with some startup ideas that I probably want to launch in the next 6 months or so.
And I have to ask you, you said that you wrote your first software at age 14. What was that?
Yeah, it was a different time, so it was the 80s, and I really fell in love with computers, right? It was everything was new. And the thing is, back then, when you got a computer, like you had to know how to write software because there weren't that many applications,
Hmm.
right? So everything that you had was like this prompt screen and like write your software and do your thing. So that's how I got started. And I really got hooked into it, fell in love. And I've been pursuing a career in technology for the last 30 years.
So is that something you just intellectually, intuitively knew how to do, or did you have a mentor who showed you? I mean, how does someone at that young age create, basically writing code for software?
Yeah, at that time, I was reading magazines and books about it, and I just like got interested on it. My father worked in technology, but not necessarily software, so it was tangential to what I was like exploring, and I was just curious about it. So like I just went
Mhm.
in and like kept doing it. I wouldn't say that I think I had an aptitude for it, right? But
Yeah,
like
right.
what I did was just pursue my curiosity.
And I'm curious, you look back on that, is that because it was so new and different and you're maybe a pioneer, as far as doing it at that stage? Would it be much harder for a 14-year-old to do something like that now?
I don't think it's harder. I think it's easier for a 14-year-old to do that now. What I think really attract me to software is that very short feedback loop. Like you do something and you get immediate feedback. Like you run your program and like, did it work or it didn't work, right? As if you do anything that is physical, like you have to build thing, even a mug, like it takes hours or sometimes days for you to see the result and be able to evaluate if your work or didn't work and iterate through it. Like a software is so quickly, right? Like you can make small changes and like try it again and try it again and try it again. So like by the end of the day, you might have tried 30 different things. In any other industry, that is really hard.
So, you've obviously worked in the tech world, and business is business. So, leading people and leadership is still leadership. Do you
Hmm.
feel like it's different in the tech world than other businesses that you've come in contact with, or do you think it's all the same and the principles are solid?
I think it's the same. Not only I think of the same, I think everything abstract to human relations. So whatever makes you a better leader also make you a better partner, a better parent, a better friend, because you're learning to work with other people and understand the needs and empathize and have compassion. And all the skills that you would use in any of those environments are very translatables.
Yeah. So, what's with this marathon training now? Have you always been athletic and something that you've always enjoyed, or is this a new endeavor?
New-ish. I started 15 years ago
Okay.
and really got hooked. So now, running is my fitness weapon, I
Yeah.
guess. Love running. I've been running a lot. Every other year, I have a major injury problem that I have to overcome. And then sets me back a little bit, but then like I get back into the saddle.
So, what do you learn from running marathons that helps you become a better computer tech guy or software guy or a better leader?
I think if people haven't ran a marathon or trained for a marathon, they don't know like the bulk of the work is not the marathon, is what comes before the marathon. Like is the 4 or 5 months of training that you have to put up. And I think that's the same thing, in business as well, in the sense like success is not what define you, is what you did before you got there, right?
Yeah,
So
absolutely.
investing time like really compounds, like putting energy, putting resources towards what you want to achieve compounds over time. And then suddenly you have an overnight success that took years of decades.
Yeah, yeah. So, in the bio, it said you've written over 1,000 blog posts, and you've just wrote this book that we've been spending the majority of our time talking about today. So, obviously, you like to write. You got another book in you? Are you working on something new, or it's time to pause and not go down that road?
I have a few book ideas. Writing and publishing a book is a lot of work, so I'm not sure I'm ready to do another one right now.
Yeah.
It's just like when you finish a marathon, you're like, I'm not gonna sign up for my next one. Let me take a break,
Yeah,
so I
yeah,
can
for
breathe.
sure.
So I think there is some aspect of this book, like this is about one framework, PRFAQ, but I think you can abstract the writing in the business context, regardless of framework. Like why writing is valuable, how do you write in business, how do you make yourself clear, how do you use writing to think through ideas. That could be another book potentially.
How old were you when you left Brazil?
I was 25, 26.
Okay. I would assume you still have family and friends in
Yes,
Brazil.
correct.
Do you get to
Yes.
visit? Do you get go back and visit a lot?
Yeah, about once a year.
Yeah. Okay. Okay. And what is the tech scene and tech world in Brazil compared to the U.S.?
It's pretty good actually. There is a lot happening there. There's a lot of software engineers and programmers in Brazil. So they do have a hacking culture. I also live in London, which also has a very strong, startup and tech culture there. The US is unbeatable, right? Particularly if you are in the West Coast, Seattle or San Francisco, it's really hard. Like here is, I don't know, it feels like 20% of the people here work in tech
Yeah.
or more, right? So the
Yeah.
density here is much higher than anywhere else in the world.
And so you live between Seattle and London now?
No, I just live in Seattle now.
Oh,
I
you
spent
okay.
like 3 years in London.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Great. Well, Marcelo, in anticipation of our discussion today, is there anything that I haven't asked you or something that you want to be sure to get into the program before we end today?
The only thing is, if you're curious about the PRFAQ framework and you want to learn more, go to the book website. I wrote articles, I have templates, examples, other books that I recommend. And the website is theprfaq.com, or you can go to Google and search for PRFAQ book, and it's going to be the #1 result.
Yeah. And is yours the only book out there on this framework, or are there
Yes,
others? Okay. Wow.
yes, for now.
Okay.
Hopefully,
Yeah.
there's going to be more in the future.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. And what do you think? You think Jeff Bezos has seen this book? What do you think he thinks?
I don't think so. I think he's busy with many other things.
Yeah. Okay. Okay. Well, at this point in the interview, Marcelo, I always ask my guests the same common question, and that question is, in relation to leadership, what is a pearl of wisdom that you could leave us with today?
I will say leadership is about people. So if you understand the psychology, the behavior science, and the incentives mechanisms that our brain uh, adapt, adopt, um, that's how you become a better leader.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Well put. Well, Marcelo, thank you for being on the show today. The book is great. Like I said earlier, it's well put together. It's well designed. It's very easy to follow and has that framework, feel to it. So I think if somebody does want to really grasp hold of this concept and become more efficient and more creative in meetings, the roadmap is there. So, I think you did a nice job on that. So, thanks for your time and sharing your story with us today. I enjoyed it and appreciate your time.
Thank you for having me, Steve.
Okay, take care and have a good rest of your day. Bye bye.
Bye.
Thank you for listening to another episode of Profiles in Leadership. To listen to all my interviews, subscribe to Profiles in Leadership with Steve Anderson on Apple Podcasts, iTunes, and many other popular podcast platforms. Some of these interviews are on video, and you can search YouTube for Profiles in Leadership with Steve Anderson. You can also access the entire library of interviews on my website, orange.coaching.com, and that is orangetheword.coaching.com, and go to the Media Center and click on Podcasts or Video Gallery. You can also enter the website from pilpodcast.com.